The world of gambling is a scary one. Peoples of all kinds gather together to challenge luck, chasing a high bestowed unto them by the whims of fate. In a gambling den, this enticing rhythm is wrapped up in a sparkly package, and its faults are obfuscated behind numbers and rules and ratios that serve only really to benefit the host. But outside, that asymmetric house edge gives way to the chaos and adrenaline of street gambling. And here, the luckiest of the lucky are the ones with the tools to touch and alter probability itself. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Crystal Cast of Blackroot Archival, a visual recollection of antiques, artifacts, and curiosities that will fascinate and intrigue. I am Noah Blackroot, and today I will be sharing the history and secrets of the great cheat Gmeir Optilar. But how did Gmeir Optilar become the great cheat, and how did he perform his unique mind-bending tricks? Well, you're about to find out, and if you like what you hear, consider giving my show a little love in return, or visiting Blackroot Archival in Seabridge to see some of these tricks yourself. When we say today's sorcerers, or wizards, or clerics stand on the shoulders of spellcasting giants, we speak of giants like Polet Fargone, who crafted abominable spells during the Five-Way War, or Telig Amelina, whose teachings bloomed an entire academy of elven healers after the Great Rot Plague. Gmeir Optilar stands tall as one of these giants, as the father of modern enchanting. But for those who are less magically inclined, or live in a place where magic is less common, especially enchanting, I should probably do a quick explanation of what enchanting is. Enchanting is the act of binding a spell to an object, and having that spell persist over time, or be able to be triggered with a certain keyword or action involving that object. In the same way a warrior might enchant their helmet or their sword or their belt, a warming or cooling spell might be applied to a piece of clothing to adjust its temperature in extreme climates. A self-ringing bell might help one wake up in the morning. But not all enchantments are examples of virtue or convenience. Some of them are downright underhanded, and no subculture is more familiar with this than that of gambling. But through most of magical history, enchantment existed in a much simpler form than it does today. To explain how that came to be, we need to go back. Back 85 years to the small, struggling town of St. Romains-Langlies, where an orphan was about to quietly herald a monumental magical breakthrough, though it would be a while before his magical abilities manifested in any notable way. Gmeir was a homeless child, like many in St. Romains at the time. Over the previous 2 decades, a sort of post-war industrial boom had evaporated, and in its wake there were broken people, empty buildings, and abandoned children. In the taverns, the workmen would drink their woes and shoot dice in specialized gambling rooms, eating what they could afford and getting in fights over debt or bruised egos or women. And speaking of, back then these rooms didn't admit women or girls, at least in Langlies. And in his youth, Gmeir would not have been allowed in these rooms. He yearned to participate in the raucous and enticing noise that he could hear through the windows, because in a bleak, dismal town like St. Romains, these dingy, loud rooms full of gruff, untrustworthy men were the most excitement that a young boy could hope to find. So, one night, Gmeir hatched a plan. He stole some local boy's work uniform and smeared his face with dirt. He blended into a small crowd of working boys that were let inside to watch the drunken, troubled men wager all of their meager belongings against each other. While the other boys laughed and drank watered-down liquor, he kept his discerning eyes on the gamblers. He noted the way they held their cards, their body language, the way they handled money, and especially how they would cheat, because those men seemed to make the most money after all. There was nothing stopping Gmeir from doing this himself. In the hovel he slept in, he would stay up late into the night, practicing sleight of hand techniques and misdirection, among other things. But we'll get to those. Of course, inevitably, the local boys would start their own little games, just out of sight of authorities, mirroring the behavior of their male role models in back alleys and shacks. Gmeir made sure he was a regular face in that crowd. His fixation and aptitude for handling a deck of cards very quickly garnered him the same type of masculine camaraderie that he envied from those gambling halls. And at first, he simply played fair, getting to know his fellows, which ones were the least observant, which ones were the most desperate, and which ones were the most violent. Over the next few years, he built up a notoriety for his luck. Or was it skill? Two characteristics all of these games surely featured, but neither of which Gmeir was interested in. Magic wasn't the most common sight around here, and when it was obvious. It certainly wasn't something that people thought could realistically influence the outcome of a game. Though, as a young man, he had developed quite the swagger, and with that confidence came a bit of raised suspicion. If there was anything Gmeir didn't have, it was a poker face, so a few unlucky challengers saw fit to call his bluff, kicking him out of several gambling hotspots. In truth, Gmeir had secretly been enchanting his coins, cards, and dice. And depending on your walk of life, you might encounter a few different low-level enchantments. The unhoused of Langlias had a common few that they'd look to for survival. There were heat enchantments to keep yourself warm, drying enchantments for repelling water, or say, weight enchantments to make gear lighter. Gmeir put a few of these to use and saw an interesting pattern. For years alongside these cheating techniques, he practiced spellcasting, particularly the enchantment binding spell Tetramuse. Now, when you're enchanting an item, any item, one must cast Tetramuse first, and then follow that up with whichever spell you plan on imbuing into the item with the same hand without losing focus on the item. Most spells have somatic actions that must be performed with your hands to cast them, as well as verbal chants to accompany them. One-handed spells like Tetramuse are typically considered the weakest level of spellcasting, as the somatic necessity is very low. It doesn't even require both hands, nonetheless the rest of your body. Extremely dangerous spells like those used in war require a ton of focus and full body actions that are not subtle or easy to pull off untrained, and sometimes even multiple bodies working together to cast a spell. So picture Gmeir, alone in wherever he was living, spending night after night experimenting casting this enchantment spell, Tetramuse. A coin sits on the table in front of him, one that he's enchanted hundreds of times. He focuses on it and does the process for Tetramuse. He chants the incantation, and with one hand presses his middle and pointer fingers together, then splits them apart. Then touches his ring to his pointer, then splits them apart. Pinky to thumb, split those, then all five together, then open palm, a classic Tetramuse cast, as long as he stays focused on the target item. It takes practice, just like any spell. But what he decided to do was to use both hands and alternate the fingers necessary between his left and right hands. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, he touches his two middle and pointer fingers all together, and then splits both pointers away on their own. He kept his middle fingers together to bridge a connection between his two hands. He rotates one hand to face away from him, then his left ring and right pointer touch while his right ring and left pointer touch. The same for his thumb and his pinky. He rotates his hands back and then presses all 10 fingers together, and when he opens his palms, he has cast an expanded Tetramuse that could bind two spells to the same item. He was not aware that no one had ever done this before. So, did he ultimately use this sensibly to bind two simple one-handed spells to the item? No, of course not. He bound one simple spell to the item, and with the other hand, bound a simple version of Tetramuse to it, essentially enchanting the item while priming it for another enchantment. He then continued to enchant the coin, interspersing an expanded Tetramuse every other cast to layer low-level spells on top of it. Excuse me. I understand that was a lot. Basically, he figured out a loophole within the properties of the spell Tetramuse that now allow us to store multiple small enchantments on an item. Despite coming up with the process himself, he also pioneered another use of it. The more spells are on an item, the more volatile the item is, trying to adhere to every rule you've saddled it with. A shield with 10 warming spells and 10 cooling spells would probably just explode the second it took one hit from a Morningstar. But Gmeir, between each cast, would flip his coin upside down, casting a heaviness spell on it when the heads was facing up, and a lightness spell on it when the tails was facing up. By doing this, as the coin flipped through the air, its weight would fluctuate, and when it struck a surface, its trajectory would change based on its weight, causing it to be more likely to flip over while the tails is facing up and the coin was lighter, and vice versa if it was heads up. He did a similar enchantment with dice, changing their weight based on their orientation and the orientation of the other die they were next to, as well as applied enchanted markings on playing cards that would change or disappear based on how and when he touched them, allowing him to swap the markings on 2 cards in a pile without even looking at them. These aren't physical properties that Gmeir picked up from a book or a class. He gleaned all of this from watching how coins and dice and cards moved and learning the rules of games and learning when information was parsable and when it wasn't. He was just a creative cheat. He spent the first decade or so of his adult life running around the world, running cons in various gambling halls and cabarets, and of course putting on street shows. Countless establishments, like the aforementioned, did give him the boot, but he eventually found that the showmanship and drama of it all was a lot more exciting than the actual riches. So, as his fame rose, his ability to deceive was turned more toward entertainment than thievery. A charming smile and a sharp suit and a top hat would lure an audience in, and then terrifyingly unbefore-seen advanced enchantments would wow them wherever he went. Of course, Gmeir would go on to be a legendary stage magician. But of course, with the spread of his name, rumors about his advanced enchantments started to spread as well. And once the International Spellcasting Council got involved, that was that. He'd have to reveal his tricks or go to prison. They were expecting a new spell, or illegal magical contraband, not an entirely unique and unheard of method of enchantment. Despite various kingdoms attempting to forbid expanded Tetramuse, once shortly after its revelation and once again after Gmeir's death 20 years ago, no country's populace has ever allowed that to pass. This spell will remain free and available for public use, much to the dismay of greedy kingdoms and authority figures. Gmeir even got to live long enough to see the conditions improve in his hometown. St. Romains is not the same place it was 85 years ago, thank the stars. Gmeir went free and became a worldwide icon of performative magic and trickery. And the years following his absolvement were a tumultuous revolution in basic technology. Street bugs, sharing scrolls, frost boxes, lake casters, autoforges, even crystal balls. The crystal ball I'm broadcasting through right now is built off of Gmeir's enchantment method. Now, I personally have no magical aptitude whatsoever, so I am forever impressed with Gmeir and grateful to him for giving me the ability to share my passions with the world by inadvertently inventing crystal balls. Now I can tell everyone that at Blackroot Archival I have an original poster for Gmeir Optilar's mind-bending star show on display, one of his first tours, as well as a few advertisements for his later shows. In addition, I have dice, cards, and coins that have his style of enchantments put on them for patrons to examine and play with. And legally I must press that those are not for sale. This has been Noah of Blackroot Archival. Thank you for watching, and I hope you stick around for more next week.